We start with the coronavirus situation here in Japan. The government is considering lifting its state of emergency a week earlier than planned, but not for the greater Tokyo area. Officials say conditions in western and central Japan may have improved enough to ease antivirus restrictions. Japan put the prefectures under a state of emergency when rising cases put tremendous strain on the healthcare system. Officials urged people to avoid non-essential outings and restaurants and bars to close early. Since then, case numbers have improved. And the government says as many as 6 out of 10 prefectures are ready to end their declarations before they expire on March 7th. But some experts are worried about the timing. If people aren't careful, they say cherry blossom season could help the virus spread.
We need to take note of concerns that lifting the state of emergency could cause infections to rebound. It is necessary to maintain measures at eateries based on the situation of each region.
Many are looking to Tokyo to gauge the risk. The capital has seen a steady decline in new cases, but remains the country's largest hotspot, with officials reporting 213 infections on Wednesday. Authorities with the central government say they'll consult once more with experts before making a final decision.
I will decide whether to lift the declaration after hearing various views at the advisory panel meeting on Friday.
In the meantime, the Prime Minister is calling on everyone to be careful and stay safe. Now, the World Health Organization says the number of new coronavirus cases continues to fall globally, but it's calling for caution against the virus's variants that have spread to more than 100 countries and territories. The WHO released the report on Tuesday. It says there were nearly 2.5 million new cases worldwide in the week from February 15th to 21st. The figure is down 11% from the previous week for the 6th straight weekly drop. The United States had the highest number of new cases at about 480,000. That's down 29% from the previous week. Brazil reported more than 316,000 infections, down 1%. Europe also saw a weekly drop, but France reported nearly 132,000 new cases, an increase of 3%. Global deaths totaled 66,359, which is down 20% for the third consecutive weekly decline. Now, the coronavirus variant first identified in Britain was reported in 101 countries and territories, up 7 from a week earlier. The variant discovered in South Africa was seen in 51 countries and territories, up 5. And the one detected in Brazil and Japan was confirmed in 29 countries and territories, an increase of 8. We now turn to a wining and dining scandal here in Japan. The communications minister has reprimanded 11 officials for violating the ethics code. The officials were repeatedly entertained by the eldest son of Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide. Suga Seigo works for a firm involved in satellite broadcasting.
I apologize that my eldest son was involved in actions that caused a public servant to violate the National Public Service Ethics Law. I deeply apologize to the public.
The Communications Ministry announced disciplinary penalties of pay cuts against 5 senior officials and 2 lower-level officials. 2 other lower-level officials were admonished, one was reprimanded, and the other was given the equivalent of a reprimand. In addition, Minister Takeda Ryota will voluntarily return 3 months' worth of wages. The ministry drew up measures to prevent similar violations.
The ministry will set up an investigation committee headed by the state minister as soon as possible to respond to doubts that the administration has been unduly influenced.
Cabinet Public Relations Secretary Yamada Makiko has since retired from the ministry, and the ethics code prevents her from being reprimanded. Her dinner is said to have cost $700 per person. Yamada said she'll voluntarily return 60% of her salary for 1 month. The opposition called for Yamada to be summoned to the lower house budget committee on Thursday as an unsworn witness. The military-appointed foreign minister of Myanmar has visited Thailand. It was the first trip abroad by a senior Myanmar official since the coup earlier this month. A Thai foreign ministry source says Una Maung Luing held talks with Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha at a Bangkok Air Force base. He also met his Thai counterpart, as well as the Indonesian foreign minister, who is urging members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to convene a special meeting. An expert on Myanmar politics says the government building was not used as the venue because Thailand didn't want the meeting to be seen as a recognition of Myanmar's military junta. Myanmar has been hit by huge rallies and a general strike since the coup, with growing demands for the release of detained leader Aung San Suu Kyi and other officials. Security forces have opened fire on protesters, resulting in casualties. The Thai Foreign Ministry source says Una Maung Luing spoke about the situation following the coup. The source says he hoped to garner support from Thailand to resolve the problems in his country. Meanwhile, Malaysia has deported over 1,000 Myanmar migrants despite a court order to halt the process. Human rights groups are condemning the move. The migrants were scheduled to hear a ruling on their deportation on Wednesday. Human rights groups had earlier filed the application, saying the migrants included people registered with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and minors who had at least one parent in Malaysia. But authorities went ahead with repatriating the migrants on Tuesday on board 3 naval ships sent by Myanmar's military. Malaysia's immigration department says all the detainees sent back were illegal immigrants and none of them were asylum seekers. The department noted they all agreed to return home voluntarily. Human Rights Watch has called on the Malaysian government to investigate the deportations and take appropriate disciplinary or legal action against anyone acting in violation of the current court order. Moving next to Afghanistan, where the number of civilians killed in terrorist attacks and fighting topped 3,000 last year for the 7th straight year. The UN assistance mission in Afghanistan says in a report 3,035 civilians died and more than 5,000 were injured in 2020. It says anti-government Taliban forces were responsible for 45% of civilian casualties, while Afghan National Security Forces were responsible for 22%. The report also states nearly 400 women were killed last year, which is the highest figure since the UN mission began keeping records in 2009. The Afghan government and the Taliban began peace talks last year, but the two sides remain divided over several issues, including the conditions required for a ceasefire. The United Nations is calling for a quick end to the conflict and greater protection for civilians. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged developed countries to make further efforts to help developing economies cope with climate change. Guterres made the remark Tuesday at an online meeting of the UN Security Council. He pointed out poor harvests due to climate change are causing social unrest and heightening the risks of violence and conflict.
Developed countries must keep their pledge of channeling $100 billion annually to the global south. They have already missed the deadline of 2020.
Developed countries promised to make the annual payments by 2020 under the Paris Agreement on climate change. The figure has been increasing, and the payments totaled nearly $79 billion in 2018. But it fell short of the 2020 goal of $100 billion. Securing support for developing countries remains a challenge for the UN. It also seeks to convince world powers to cut their emissions of greenhouse gases. Shifting now to the weather, calmer conditions is in store for most parts of Japan on Thursday. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh has a look at the forecast for here and elsewhere in our World Weather Report.
Hello, looks like that we're going to be dealing with a cooling trend across Japan as we go through the rest of this week, and rain is going to be a big part of the story for the eastern and western areas of Japan as we go forward in time. What's happening is we have some rain developing across eastern areas of China, and that's going to be the bulk of the moisture that's going to be along the stationary front. It will pass toward the east and head its way toward Japan. In the meantime, high pressure will keep things dry and winds will be relaxing just a bit as it's going to be a calming effect across Japan. Dry in Tokyo on Thursday with a high of 11, but rain coming into the picture by Friday. Showers also expected in Shanghai and Chongqing as we go through Thursday. Meanwhile, across North America, we do have some colder air moving back into the central plains as a cold front is pushing in along with a high pressure system bringing in a northerly flow. So that's going to help push down those temperatures. We do have some snow expected from the Great Lakes up toward the northeast as we go through Wednesday, but by Thursday that will clear out. We'll be seeing sunny skies from New York into Chicago. Denver, though, looking at some snow with a high of 1 on Thursday. Across Europe, we have a low-pressure system running into the Scandinavian peninsula with some heavy snow possible along the coastal areas of Norway and some showers possible down toward the south and west along the extended cold front. But high pressure is the big story across the central portions of the continent, which means we're looking at highs into the 20s in places like Rome, Berlin also at 20, Vienna at 13, but Paris and Lisbon looking at some showers coming up on Thursday. Before we go, I want to take you over into Poland, show you some video as many people flocked to a frozen lake in the country last weekend to build thousands of snowmen to raise money for a sick toddler. The baby is 21 months old and has a serious heart defect. He needs special surgery that can only be performed at a hospital in the U.S. His mother said that she felt great emotion when she saw dozens of people turning out to help build the snow statues. Many snowmen stood side by side on the beaches of the lake. Wishing that toddler all the best. Hope you have a good day wherever you are.
A court in Turkey finds a top official of a Turkish jet company and 2 pilots guilty of aiding the escape of former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn from Japan. Japanese officials have charged Ghosn with financial crimes. In Nepal, thousands of anti-government demonstrators celebrate a Supreme Court ruling that said the dismissal of Parliament by the Prime Minister was unconstitutional. In Los Angeles, golf star Tiger Woods suffered serious leg injuries in a car accident Tuesday. And in Ghana, the World Health Organization's vaccine-sharing program COVAX provides its first COVID-19 shots.
Ghana has become the first nation to receive a shipment from the international COVID vaccination drive COVAX. It's received 600,000 AstraZeneca doses for free in a scheme aimed at ensuring all countries get equal access to vaccines. New data indicates that a single shot of the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine is safe and effective. The vaccine can be kept at normal fridge temperatures for up to 3 months, making distribution less difficult. US police say Tiger Woods won't face a reckless driving charge after crashing his car in California. The golf legend has been awake and responsive after his emergency operation following the accident. And a former Syrian intelligence agent has been jailed in Germany over atrocities committed by the Assad regime. It's the first such verdict for crimes against humanity in the 10-year-old Syrian civil war.